In NASCAR's 75-year history, there have been many numbers come and go. On any given weekend, you will see 36 to 40 unique numbers on the track, and each of those numbers has a story to tell. Hi, I'm your host Matt, and this is NASCAR Number History, presented by Dogleg Media. In this series, we look to tell the stories of each of those numbers. Who won with the number first, who found victory lane the most, and every other driver to grab a trophy in the number. We go in numerical order, and today we explore numbers 70 through 74. If you missed numbers 1 through 69, the number history playlist will be linked below. And I want to go ahead and apologize for this in advance, but I have strep throat right now, so if my voice sounds scratchy or icky, just know that's what it is. But with that out of the way, let's dive into some more NASCAR number history. And we start this one off with a winless number. As a matter of fact, the 70 has the most starts without a single win in NASCAR history. Let's look at some of the stats. The 70 has competed in 761 races with 14 top fives. It's earned 1 pole position and has had 17 lead lap finishes. The first to drive the 70 would be a Hall of Famer, Buck Baker. Baker would make 1 start in the 70, being the number's first in 1950 at Daytona Beach. He would start 9th and finish 9th in a field of 41 cars in the number's first race. Instead of doing cool names for this one, I want to highlight the driver with the most starts in the number, J.D. McDuffie. McDuffie holds some records that aren't the most prestigious. He holds the record for most starts without a win, making 653 starts from 1963 to his tragic death in 1991. He would collect 106 top 10 finishes, but here's where that stat becomes crazy. He never finished on the lead lap in his entire career. McDuffie would primarily run the 70, and would get the number's only pole position coming in 1978 at Dover. McDuffie would suffer a basilar skull fracture at Watkins Glen in 1991, which would ultimately lead to his passing. After JD's death, the number wasn't seen on track for 15 years, with Johnny Sauter bringing it back in 2006. I wanted to give a nod to JD. Through all the heartbreak and losses, he never gave up, and he was a lot of the viewers' honorable mention as well. And speaking of honorable mentions, we have quite a few for this one. Vivid mentioned Bob Ross, and no, after some research, it isn't that Bob Ross. He would make 1 start in the 70 in 1963 at Riverside. Kids in the Glen suggested Hall of Famer Rex White, who would also make 1 start in the 70 in 1958 at New Oxford. And Kyle suggested Johnny Sauter, who we mentioned before as the driver to bring the 70 back to the track after JD's death. And finally, Impact suggested a legendary name, Ralph Earnhardt. He would make 1 start in the number in 1964 at Charlotte. For those of you that don't know, Ralph is the father of 7-time champion Dale Earnhardt. And now we move on to the current driver. Tombstones make a much awaited return. There are only a few numbers to have a current driver in the 70s, but that's more than last video's 0 current drivers. The last to drive the 70 would be Mike Skinner in 2009, so this one hasn't seen the track in a long time. Johnny Sauter would be the last full-time driver of the number, running it for the 2007 season. I like the number 70. I hope to see someone pick it up soon. It's paid its dues, and it needs a win. And now we move on to the 71, and here's one that surprised me. I knew that the driver with the most wins would get a lot of wins in this number, but I didn't understand just how many they would get with it. Let's dive in. The 71 has 44 total wins with 4 different drivers. It's competed in 1,147 races, which is the most of any number in the 70s, and it has a 3.8 win percentage. And this is a historical one. The first to drive the 71 would be the first woman to compete in NASCAR, Sarah Christian. Sarah would compete in NASCAR's first ever race, piloting the 71 in 1949 at Charlotte. She would make 7 career starts, 5 of which coming in the 71, and would also get the number's first top 10 at Langhorne in 1949, where she would finish 6th. And then we move on to the first to win. The first to win in the 71 would be a Hall of Famer, with Fireball Roberts getting the win in 1950 at Hillsboro. And here's a cool stat. This would be Fireball's first win of his career as well, and it would be the only start he would make in the number. 1 for 1 in the 71. That's pretty good. And the driver with the most wins is the only driver I knew before this series to have ever won in the number. Bobby Isaac would pilot the 71 to an impressive 35 wins. He would drive it for K&K Insurance Racing from 1967 to 1972. Isaac would also win a championship with the number, winning the 1970 Cup Series title. He also holds the NASCAR record for most pole positions earned in a season, winning 20 of them in 1969 with the number. Isaac is a Hall of Famer, being inducted into the NASCAR Hall of Fame in 2016. And then we move on to other winners. Buddy Baker would add his name to the winners list for the 71. He would collect 3 wins in his time in the K&K 71, highlighting it from 1972 to 1974, including winning the 1973 World 600. Baker is another Hall of Famer to win in the 71, being inducted into the NASCAR Hall of Fame in 2020. And the last to take the 71 to victory lane would be Dave Marcus. Marcus would win 5 times in the 71, which would be the only 5 wins of his career. He would also come extremely close to a championship, finishing second in the points in 1975 with the number. The last win for the number would come in 1982 at Richmond. Marcus also holds the record for the most Daytona 500 starts, with 33 starts, 32 of those being consecutive. Now that's a true Ironman stat. And now we get to honorable mentions. Kyle suggested the 71 TRG machine that Bobby Labonte ran in 2010. I forgot that Bobby ran in the 71, but I do remember that Tax Slayer paint scheme. NASCAR 2345 and NASCAR Kid wanted to make sure I included Ryan Truex in the 71. He would attempt to run the 2019 Daytona 500 in the number, but unfortunately did not make the field. Thanks for the mention though. And here's a cool one. High Octane Cards mentioned Kerry Earnhardt. Kerry is the oldest son of Dale Earnhardt and would only compete against his father and brother Dale Jr. in one race, Michigan in 2000. This would be the first of 7 starts for Kerry. And on to the current driver. Maybe I should put a tombstone on a t-shirt. It seems like that's the brand of the series here recently. The last time the number was on track would be back in 2011 at Homestead with Mike Bliss driving for TRG. Andy Lally would drive the majority of that season, and I thought someone mentioned Lally, but I couldn't find the comment. If this was you, I apologize. The 71 has been absent for over 10 years, but it has a winning history. Will we see this number return soon? And moving right along to the 72. The 72 has 14 total wins with 3 different drivers. It's competed in 574 races with a 2.4 win percentage. The first to pilot the 72 would be Lee Schmidt in 1950 on the beaches of Daytona. Lee would only make 2 total starts in the Cup Series, and you know what that means, it's silhouette time. The first to win in the 72 would be Hall of Famer Joe Weatherly. Weatherly's first career win would be the number's first win, coming in 1958 at Nashville. He would only make 2 starts in the number, with his win being his first start with the number, driving for Holman Moody. Weatherly is a 2-time champion and class of 2015 Hall of Fame inductee. And on to the most wins. Another Hall of Famer would be the winningest driver of the number, and this time it's Benny Parsons. Parsons would collect 12 wins in the number from 1970 to 1978 driving for DeWitt Racing, including winning the 1975 Daytona 500 in the number. Benny would win his lone championship in the number as well, claiming the 1973 Cup Series title. He would also be the last driver to take the number to victory lane, with the number's last win coming in 1978 at Riverside. Parsons was inducted into the NASCAR Hall of Fame in 2017. And we only have one other winner to mention for the 72, and it's Bobby Johns. Johns would win at Bristol in 1962, with this being the last win of his career. He would be a 2-time winner in the Cup Series. And on to honorable mentions, Regera suggested the 72 Arctic Coolers car driven by Cole Witt and Corey LaJoie. This is a pretty nice paint scheme to slide in for this one. Thanks for the mention. And Titan Ironwolf suggested Rusty Wallace, who would make a handful of starts in the 72 during the 81 and 82 seasons. Great mention here as well. And surprise, there's no current driver. Do y'all even read the tombstone text anymore? The last to drive the 72 would be Corey LaJoie at Homestead in 2018. The last full-time driver of the number would be Cole Witt in 2017 for TriStar. This one surprised me. I didn't think it would have this many wins, but maybe that's because we just came from the 50s and 60s. And here we are at the penultimate number for this one. It's the 73. And we've had 3 numbers in a row with wins. This hasn't happened for a while. Let's appreciate the good times and dive into all the 73 has to offer. The 73 has 2 total wins with 1 driver. It's competed in 199 total races with a 1% win percentage. The 73 has its roots all the way back in the beginning, with Tony Ganove driving at Langhorne in 1949 for the number's first appearance. He's another one-race driver. Black silhouette time it is again. And our only winner is a guy who won the first ever Daytona 500, until he didn't. We're talking about Johnny Beauchamp. He is the number's only winner, with the number's first win coming in 1959 at Atlanta, where he would lap the entire field, and the number's last win coming in 1960 at Nashville. Beauchamp was, however, declared the winner of the first ever Daytona 500, way back in 1959. This was at a time where the sport didn't have cameras covering every square inch of the racetrack, so photo finishes were kind of hard to determine the true winner. This classic photo is what was used to determine that Beauchamp had not won the race, but in fact Lee Petty had won. Today that doesn't look like much of a photo finish, but for 1959, 10 years before we put someone on the moon, that was a nail-biter that took literally days to sort out. Beauchamp would be a two-time winner in the Cup Series, with both of his wins coming in the 73, and he came oh so close to glory winning the first Daytona 500. Moving into honorable mentions, Sonic Sean suggested Bill Schmidt for his number 73 Mountain Dew Buick. Mountain Dew schemes are always good, and this one is no exception. Tan Dog had a really cool suggestion with a lot of history behind it. He suggested Joe Nemechek, who would get the ride in the 1997 Daytona 500 in Phil Barkdahl's 73 machine. Nemechek would miss the field in his Sabco Racing 42, and when he would miss the field, team owner Felix Sabates would write Phil a fat check to let Nemechek drive the car. Thanks for this really cool piece of history, great mention. And Freddie would suggest the aforementioned Phil Barkdahl, strictly for the name, and I can't blame him. If there was a coolest name segment for this one, it definitely would have made it. And alright, there's not a single current driver for any of these numbers. Sorry for waiting until now to tell you. The last to drive the 73 would be Travis Kvapil in 2012 at Darlington for BK Racing. Not a single driver has started every single race of a season with this number, and that's kind of a bummer. And then on to the 74. We start the video winless, and we finish the video winless. We had a good run. Gotta take the good with the bad. Let's finish this thing up. The 74s competed in 469 total races with 7 top 5s. It's one of only a few numbers to have never won a pole position, and it's had 10 lead lap finishes. The first to drive the 74 would be Paul Stanley. No, not that Paul Stanley from Kiss, although we will definitely use his picture for this one since the actual Paul Stanley was photo shy. Stanley would pilot the number for the first time in 1959 at North Wilkesboro. He would only make 2 Cup Series starts, both in the 74. And then we move to winning names for the first time in this one. And first up is Bunky Blackburn. Bunky is a killer name. He would make 71 Cup Series starts, with only one of those coming in the 74 in 1966 at Atlanta. And Elmo's back. Elmo Langley would make 1 start in the 74 in 1966 at Greenville. And then on to honorable mentions for the last time today. Regera, Timmy, Kyle, and Luna all suggested the fake state car driven by Reed Sorensen in 2020 to promote the Netflix series The Crew. That's a cool scheme with a cool story. Was the show any good though? I never saw it, so let me know in the comments down below if it's something I should check out. And then Coke suggested LD Austin, and he would make a lot of starts in the 74. He would never win, but he would collect 54 top 10s. Thanks for the mention. And luckily we will have a couple of non-tombstone numbers the next time around. I've been making far too many of these. The last time the number was on the track was with Reed Sorensen's fake state car in 2020. The last full-time driver of the number would be Tony Raines in 2003. This one is winless, and without a full-time driver, it is looking extremely likely that it'll stay that way for a long time to come. And that'll do it for numbers 70 through 74. It was nice to get back to the 5-number videos and having multiple different winners. As always, I'm prone to forgetting drivers. Let me know which drivers of any of these numbers I may have missed for this one. If you haven't seen numbers 1 through 69, the number history playlist will be linked below. Be sure to check them out. We will be back next week to finish off the 70s. If you liked the video, consider giving it a thumbs up and subscribing. It helps a ton and I definitely appreciate it. And did you know that 74% of my viewers aren't subscribed, but they are returning viewers? If you haven't subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? Be sure to check out the community tab of the channel as well. We do cool little giveaways like autographed merchandise and diecasts, as well as updates and polls for the channel. You definitely don't want to miss it. We also have a Discord server. Find the invite in the About section of the channel or down in the description below, and come join us over there for even more fun and learning. But that'll do it for us here at Dogleg Media. I'm Matt, your host, and you've been watching NASCAR Number History. I'll see you next time.